Okay, I think it's finally time for us all to sit down and have a little chat. We all knew this day would come, and when you reach a certain time in your life, everyone has to have this chat. None of us really want to have this chat, we all dread having it. So instead of it being awkward, let's have this chat here, just you and me. Yep, it's time that Vet Talk discusses colic in horses. This is such a big and important topic because it's everyone's greatest fear in horses because colic can be a life-ending problem. What I want to do over the next 2 episodes is explain what colic is and go through how I have and now treat colic, and of course why it is important to trust and listen to your veterinarian on how to deal with colic. What is colic? Well, at its basic, it's abdominal pain. And really the basic is a good definition because it is pain coming from anywhere in a horse's abdomen or belly. The problem with the basic definition is it isn't specific. Is colic bad or really bad? We don't know. There are so many things that can cause colic that we have taught people as vets, and people have learned through experience, that if we see a case of colic, we treat it seriously because it's hard to tell how serious it is. For clients, I want to break this down to a simple binary answer. Is the colic surgically managed or is it medically managed? Medically managed is the stuff you and I can handle. Surgical management requires a surgical facility and can't be fixed with drugs. Medical is bad. Surgical is really bad. How do you determine which is which? Guess what? You need your veterinarian for that. Their colic exam is what guides you on how to proceed with a colic case and how to manage it. The rest of this episode may be more fun for the vet students, but it will give you as clients an idea of how many ways a horse can colic. I'm just going to go from start to finish of the GI tract and tell you the ways I know horses can colic. First, I'm not really going to discuss vaccines or medication reactions. For example, if we give some Lutalice to a horse, it causes muscle contractions, which can make a horse colic. But that goes away when the drug wears off. I have seen colic from vaccine reactions, but again, these things typically wear off. While you may want a vet to evaluate a horse with those problems, because again, you don't know what is causing the colic, those are not what I'm going to focus on in today's discussion. For the rest of this episode, I'm going to go over ways a horse can colic. If you are interested, continue to listen. Or if you want, you can skip forward to our next episode where I will discuss management of colic cases. Okay, so ways a horse can colic. I'm going to skip the mouth and esophagus as we go down the GI tract because I feel problems there are different discussions. So the first place I'm going to start, stomach issues. Grain overload is one issue with the stomach where I typically am more concerned about laminitis than colic, but because of the ingestion of feeds that will ferment in the stomach and cause some problems. The stomach itself might get filled up from fluid backing up from the intestines, or if something is impacted where a grain overload blocks something, or potentially cancer in the GI tract. This is fixed by relieving whatever is causing the blockage or buildup and draining the fluid. Now, going more specifically to the small intestine, there are a few things that can go wrong there. Intussusception, which is where some bowel goes into the lumen of another piece of bowel. We see that more in foals. We need an ultrasound to diagnose that. We can treat the signs, but likely will need surgery to correct. Volvulus, which is rotation of the segment of intestine along its axis. This is where everything backs up. Surgery is required to fix this. Okay, we could also have internal or external herniation of the small intestines. The internal is where some intestines are going through something like the epiploic foramen or mesenteric defects. Example of an external where hernias have occurred. Example from trauma, from a kick or something of that, something like that. And they'll need surgery to correct. Pedunculated lipomas or fat older horses. Basically, in fat horses that are older, these fat will accumulate and drop down, forming a pendulum, and that will twist around the intestines. This requires a surgical fix. And I see so many fat horses and worry about this constantly, especially since I own one of those fat horses. Ileal impactions, likely some association with worms, but dry ingesta, that it can't get through the smaller hole of the ileum. This requires surgery to fix. Ascarid impactions, we might see this in foals. This is why when I see a foal with a high worm count, I try to kill those worms slowly so not all the worms die at once and cause a blockage. The nice thing is, if we keep parasite levels low, foals will develop immunity at about 6 months to a year from ascarids or roundworms. So this isn't a problem I see in adults. This one I have seen a lot and has way too many names. Duodenitis, which I don't say that one much. I usually say anterior enteritis or proximal jejunitis. This is inflammation and edema of the duodenum and proximal jejunum. This is where a lot of fluid is backing up, and it's really dramatic when you drain this fluid. We drain this fluid by sticking a nasogastric tube through the nose and into the stomach, and if we get reflux or fluid coming out, we're suspicious of anterior enteritis. It's generally a very copious amount of fluid, and the client is pretty overwhelmed when we drain this, but the horse is really relieved. I treat the underlying condition with lots of fluids, IV, antibiotics, Banamine. This likely will need hospitalization, albeit I have managed some at the farm. So it can go either way, but we do have to remember to consider laminitis developing with this one too, so it can be tricky. Moving on to the large intestine, cecal impactions. This is where dry ingesta in the cecum, and the cecum is gigantic in a horse, but this dry ingesta gets backed up and blocks things. We have to try to hydrate this horse to help break this up, but it may need surgery to correct. And some of the worry is you want to do a surgery before the cecum perforates, because if it backs up and gets too big of ingesta, the impaction may rip the intestines. This typically causes death. Large colon impactions occur at the narrowing of the pelvic flexure around the transverse colon. Medical management can help with this, but we may need surgery. Sand impaction, we see this in sandy areas of the country, is where ingested sand gets into the intestinal tract, starts causing problems. Medical management can help with this, but surgical management can sometimes is necessary. Intussusceptions can occur in the large intestines as well. Large colon displacements. This is where the left ventral and dorsal colons are freely movable, and they can move around and go where they shouldn't go. Surgery is required to fix this. One note is a left dorsal displacement. This involves the spleen, and phenylephrine may be able to shrink the spleen and allow things to go to normal. And lack of phenylephrine, scaring the horse, will administer a natural source of this drug that may result in the spleen shrinking. Sometimes rolling them can also unlock the spleen. There seems to be a big misconception out there that a horse rolling during colic is bad. In this case, it could actually help. The only time I'm particularly worried about a horse rolling and causing problems with colic is if it is a mare that has just had a foal and there's a lot of extra space for intestines to move. Otherwise, I just don't get concerned if I see a horse rolling. If the rolling moves gas or untraps a spleen, I'm happy. Another one with the colon, large colon volvulus, involves the colon twisting, and this requires a surgical correction to repair. Okay, moving on. Disorders of the small colon and rectum. Small colon impaction is where we have dehydrated fecal matter blocking and slowing things up. This is usually managed medically, but it can become surgical. Enterolithiasis, this is where magnesium and ammonium phosphate starts building up around a nidus or something in the intestinal tract. creates a big ball, usually a smooth ball, looks like a cannonball, and it comes and goes because it'll like pop into the descending colon and then get pushed out. So sometimes these things are challenging to diagnose because the horse magically gets better. This is surgical to get those stones out. Can't break them up medically. In foals, they can have a meconium impaction. Usually we're treating with enemas for this. Rectal tears can definitely cause problems, and treatment depends on how bad the tear is. There are a few colics associated with pregnancy. Uterine torsion, uterine rupture, ruptured prepubic tendon. None of these are good. Another note on the colics associated with pregnancy, as I said, after a foal is born, there's a lot of extra space in the abdomen where the foal used to be. So these horses I would want to prevent from rolling. Those are the ones I'm concerned about could have problems because the intestines move around much more easily when there's all that free space. Lastly, gastric ulcers and diarrhea diseases can cause colic, but usually have medical fixes and aren't really what I'm discussing here today. So, this has been a list for a private practitioner. This is not a board specialist list nor a complete list that you might see on an exam, but it gives you an idea of the areas that colic could potentially occur when a horse colics, and why an exam is so important. We're, with this exam, trying to rule in or rule out the problem so we can treat or get your horse to the proper place for treatment. Thankfully, the bad colics are rare, but sometimes they are bad, and the best we can do is euthanize. As vets, we are attempting to treat this horse and relieve its suffering, and the best way we can do this is give you the most information we can so you can make the best decision how to help your horse. Now that we've basically discussed all the various areas that we can have a colic, with the next episode I'm going to go through the exam process and how I try to manage horses that have colic. This exam gives you an idea what's going on with your horse. So this episode was short, but I think this next episode will be a lot more practical. But I just wanted to give everyone an idea of the various ways we can colic, and why when you call up your veterinarian and you say your horse is colicking, we can't give you a straight answer on what might be happening or how serious it is. So that's why we want to do our exam. That exam is just so important with horses and being able to guide you through a colic. And we'll go over next time, but most colics aren't that bad, but the ones that are can be very bad, so we need to be as aggressive with those as possible. So we'll have our next episode soon, and thanks for listening. I'm Dr. Nathan. Thanks for listening. I hope our discussions are valuable to you and aid in giving perspective. If you want to contact us, please reach out to theveterinarianpodcast@gmail.com. You can find a complete list of the podcast episodes on SoundCloud. If you find this information helpful and want more content, please join our Patreon, patreon.com/theveterinarianpodcast. And don't forget to follow our Facebook page, facebook.com/theveterinarianpodcast. As always, thanks for listening, and I hope this information is helpful to you. If you do find it helpful, please like it, share it, so other people may find it helpful as well.